if you use WordPress or WooCommerce, you are bound to hear the names WordPresscom or Jetpack. One of the pre-installed plugins on every WordPress site is Akismet, and when you go to sign up for an Akismet account, they ask you to create a WordPresscom or Jetpack login. And if you're a WooCommerce website owner, one of the steps during the WooCommerce setup wizard is to ask you to connect your store with Jetpack to enhance the store. So what is WordPress.com and what is Jetpack, and how do they relate to your own WordPress website? Hey everyone, I'm David from ClickWP and you're watching Web Mastery, the show for essential know-how, quick tips and must-have tools to help you make WordPress work harder for you. In this episode, I'm going to explain the relationship between WordPress, WordPress.com, Jetpack, WooCommerce, and all the other players in the WordPress ecosystem. Now, before I dive right in, don't forget to like this video and hit subscribe. So WordPress can have quite a learning curve, and one of those things that makes it a little more confusing than necessary is the relationship between WordPress.com and WordPress itself. Yeah, so WordPress and WordPress.com are different things. You can see here from the website. WordPress is software and WordPress.com is a website builder. So the way to understand them is like this. WordPress.org is where the WordPress software lives. And WordPress software is a do-it-yourself thing. You download it, you install it in your own server. You have to get all of the services required to create a website, like the server, the domain name, and all the kind of stuff. And so that's called the self-hosted WordPress software. WordPress.com is designed to make things easy for you. So you just go to WordPress.com, sign up for a new website, create an account, and you're ready to go. They provide all of the services. Okay, so in a nutshell, WordPress.org is home to the WordPress software that powers WordPress.com. So that's confusing, but I'll try to explain it a bit further. So just imagine that, okay, so WordPress is software and the WordPress.com is a service. And WordPress.com provides many of the services required to run a website, including the hosting, the domains, and also spam filtering. On WordPress.com, there are millions of blogs and sites, and they need a way to protect all of that from comment and contact form spam. So they created this service called Akismet, which is their spam filtering service. And but the guys on the self-hosted WordPress, WordPress.org, says that, we need a spam filtering service too. So the WordPress.com guys decided to share Akismet with the rest of the WordPress community by making Akismet into a plugin that then connects to the WordPress.com services. After Akismet, WordPress.com was looking for other stuff that it can share with the self-hosted WordPress sites, and that led to Gravatar. Gravatar is a profile picture service, so that if you just set up your profile picture once, it appears and works on every WordPress site. It's built into all WordPress sites. And then they realized that there's actually a lot more services that they can provide to the self-hosted WordPress users. So to do this, they packaged it into a plugin called Jetpack, and via Jetpack, you can offload some of your website files to WordPress.com hosting. You can use the WordPress.com stats service, and you can even use the themes from WordPress.com on your own non-WordPress.com site. So when you hear the word Jetpack, that basically is an umbrella term to mean WordPress.com services. Now, WordPress.com and all of its services are owned by Automattic. That's the company that owns WordPress.com. So after WordPress.com, they started offering WordPress VIP, who build and host some of the world's biggest websites like New York Post, USA Today, and News Corp websites. Automattic also owns WooCommerce, so that's the connection there. And when you want to go to buy an extension from WooCommerce.com, you will need you guessed it, a WordPress.com account. So all of them are in a family of products, and they're all part of this great big Automattic family, and you can see them proclaim it on some of their websites. It's a family of WordPress solutions. Now, in the larger picture, the WordPress ecosystem is really huge. All right, there are hundreds of companies that build their business on top of WordPress in the form of plugins, themes, hosting, and other types of services. ClickWP is able to exist because of this WordPress ecosystem. Here you can see that just some of the players in the ecosystem. That ecosystem is really large, and this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but from my diagram here, I think you can see that Automattic oversees or controls a very large portion of this ecosystem. So a WordPress.com account is a bit like a Google account, and with a Google account you can log into all of the Google services like Google Maps, Google Analytics, Google Mail, and so on. And with a WordPress.com account you can log into all of the Automattic services that we've discussed before, which is WooCommerce, Akismet, Jetpack, and so on. Okay, so it's quite useful to have a WordPress.com or Jetpack account because Automattic has such a large footprint in the ecosystem. Okay, let's take a moment to recap. WordPress is not WordPress.com. Okay, your user account. So you've got your website and you've got WordPress on that website, and you need a user account to log into WordPress on your website. That user account is not the same user account that you use to log into WordPress.com. So logging into WordPress.com, you have to create a completely different and new user account. So I usually tell people to avoid Jetpack and WordPress.com because it's confusing, right? I mean, even I get mixed up sometimes. And for the most part, there are lots of alternatives to Jetpack, but there are certain cases where it's pretty unavoidable. You have to get a Jetpack or a WooCommerce.com account or a WordPress.com account. All right. Some of the reasons for that are if you want to buy an official extension from WooCommerce.com. So WooCommerce.com sells the official WooCommerce extensions, and like I mentioned before, if you want to buy one of those extensions, you've got to create an account, and that's a WordPress.com account for WooCommerce.com. Again, confusing. And if you want to use the WooCommerce mobile app, you will also need a Jetpack account. There's Jetpack for WooCommerce, and if you want to use any of the Jetpack services, like the stats, CDN, backup, and then you'll definitely need a WordPress.com or a Jetpack account. So I hope that explains it. But before I go, I have one bonus question for you. This is a pretty unrelated question, but it's frequently asked together. Right? The question is, who owns WordPress? Now, and the answer is WordPress is owned by everyone. The WordPress isn't a product or a company, it's an open source project. So it does have overseers, but nobody actually owns the code to WordPress, and therefore nobody actually gets paid to work on WordPress. Everybody who works on WordPress, writing the code or teaching about WordPress or creating websites with WordPress, well, not creating websites with WordPress, but basically everybody who improves the WordPress software and community is donating their time and expertise for free. They're donating it, okay? That being said, many of the companies who have built their businesses on WordPress, because they've built their business on WordPress, their interests are tied, and it is in their interest to contribute back to WordPress, to improve WordPress. So when you spend money on plugins, themes, services, and hosting, all of that indirectly goes back to WordPress, because that encourages those companies to continue developing WordPress further so that they can sell more of their product. So in a sense, WordPress belongs to you. You're paying for it indirectly. WordPress belongs to everybody who uses and contributes back to WordPress. Okay, if you want to learn about contributing to WordPress, one of the best places to start is an official WordPress meetup group. You can go to meetup.com/pro/WordPress, and you'll find one of the many hundreds of meetup groups, and you're bound to find one that's pretty close to you. Okay, one last tidbit, one more detour. While technically nobody owns WordPress, there is an organization that owns the WordPress trademark, and that organization is the WordPress Foundation. And because WordPress is trademarked, no one is allowed to use the term WordPress in their names. So that's why I can't call my company ClickWordPress.com. It has to be ClickWP.com. There is one exception, however, and that exception is automatic, because as we've seen, they've got a service, they've got a product called WordPresscom. Why do they have that exception? Well, because. Okay, so that's it for today. I hope you learned something new. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like the video and look for Click WP on Facebook and YouTube and connect with us there. All right, so I'm David from Click WP. We are WordPress experts just a click away, and I hope to see you in the next video.